Hello everyone, my name is Alex from Team 18172 Uplift Robotics. I'm also going to be talking about some more advanced CAD concepts from this week onwards, along with Nitin, who you may already be familiar with. So today's topic is the family table, a feature in PTC Creo parametric that allows a user to create similar instances of a generic part with small deviations to specific dimensions or parameters, and in that sense, a family table allows someone to create standardized models very quickly. One of the applications that I personally use family tables for is creating simple 3D printable parts, such as spacers, or for modifying commercial off-the-shelf parts without having to modify the standard piece. A spacer is one of the simplest ways I can demonstrate the concept of a family table, and so that's the example that I'm going to choose for today. So let's make a spacer. I created a blank part, and I'm going to start by sketching off of the top plane. And a spacer generically has 3 different dimensions that drive its application, and that's its ID, its OD, and its length. So I created this part and named it using some random dimensions. If you look at the top of the screen, I set the ID to 6 and the OD to 8. So those are the dimensions I'm going to use. And then I'm going to click OK. And then I get the sketch. Off of the sketch, I'm going to extrude, and I'm just going to extrude for 5, as I said at the top, and extrude symmetric. So now that we finally have a spacer, we can go and create a family table for it. If you go into this Model Intent dropdown here, you can find the Family Table tool, or you can go into the Tools tab and find the Family Table here as well. I usually go to the Tools ribbon, although that's just a personal preference of mine. If you click the Family Table and then create an instance, you can see that the instances are denoted by different rows in this table, and then if you add a column, a pop-up will come up where you are told to add an item to this list. So you can choose from 9 different items, although I generally choose dimensions or parameters because those are generally the simplest and won't really mess up anything. If you go for something like a feature on a more complex part, then you have a chance to maybe mess with a couple of constraints. Since I created the part using dimensions, that's what I'm going to add. So if I go to dimension and then click add, and then click the sketch, I can add one of these dimensions. So I'll start with the inner diameter, and then I'll add the outer diameter, and then the length. If I now press OK, I'll be back in the family table, and then you'll see that this new instance now has these separate columns where I can edit these dimensions. So let's say you wanted to do this with parameters instead of dimensions. How would you do that? Well, you'd add another column, but instead of clicking dimension and then add up here, you'd click parameter, and then the parameter pop-up will show up. If you click on the name of the parameter and then press insert selected, it'll also be added to the table. But for now, we're just going to use dimensions. So you have these dimensions, and let's say you want this new instance of a spacer to have an outer diameter of 10 and a length of 7. So I'm just going to rename it first. And then if you go here, the inner diameter stays the same, the outer diameter becomes 10, and then the length becomes 7, and then you can open up this new part, and then if you check the dimensions on it by going into analysis and then measure, you can see that the diameter is now 10 here, and then from here to the bottom is now 7. And now we have a spacer that fits our application by just changing 2 dimensions and without having to create a new part. Another good thing that I forgot to mention about family tables is that model properties actually carry over between the generic model and instance models. So if I go into mass properties here under model report and analysis and check it, the density is actually 1 because the material isn't assigned to this part right now. But if I go to the generic model, press File, Prepare, and then Model Properties, I can actually assign a material here, going into Standard Materials and then Plastics, and choose PLA. If I do that, then in this part, you can check the mass properties, the density is there, and then it'll give you a mass. And then if you go into the instance model, then you can check the mass properties again. The density will carry over, and then you'll also get a mass here. Right now it's very high because I have the units in inches instead of millimeters, which is my bad. But other than that, You can see how useful this will be in calculating the weight of your robot to a fairly precise degree without having to assign a material to every single part in your robot. This introduction into family tables demonstrates how you can create standardized parts very quickly that retain the parameters of a generic model. There are other, more complicated ways to use the family table, which includes just about any type of feature in Creo parametric, but this first tutorial has shown how the family table tool would be used in most cases to help your FTC team. This has been Alex from Team 18172 Uplift Robotics. If you have any suggestions or video ideas, leave them in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next video.